What if your most crushing defeat was the very thing that set the stage for your greatest victory? What if the moments when the scoreboard screams loss are actually the building blocks of resilience? And what if the champions we admire most in sports didn't rise in spite of failure, but because of it? In American sports culture, defeat is never the end of the story. It is the starting point of something bigger. From high school gyms to Olympic arenas, athletes across the country encounter setbacks that test their confidence, their preparation, and sometimes even their will to continue. But what separates those who fade away from those who become icons is how they respond to loss. For athletes, defeat is not just a painful memory, it is raw fuel. It's what drives them back into the gym earlier than everyone else, what keeps them studying film long after the lights are out, and what hardens their spirit when pressure mounts again. The connection between defeat and motivation can be traced to the core psychology of athletes. Sports are measured in numbers, scores, times, records. A defeat makes those numbers impossible to ignore. It forces athletes to confront weaknesses directly. Did they miss free throws? Did they slow down in the final lap? Did they falter under pressure? Defeat doesn't lie, and because of that, it provides a brutally honest assessment of performance. That honesty is what sparks growth. A victory might mask flaws, but a loss shines a spotlight on them. And for athletes determined to improve, that spotlight becomes a guide. Consider Michael Jordan, often celebrated as the greatest basketball player of all time. People remember the championships, the MVP awards, and the game-winning shots. But Jordan himself famously said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." His defeats weren't just obstacles. They were essential ingredients in his legendary career. Each miss was a lesson, each loss a motivator, each setback a reminder to keep working. Failure in sports teaches more than mechanics. It teaches mental toughness. Athletes learn that disappointment is temporary, but quitting makes it permanent. When a team loses in the playoffs, they don't go home forever. They regroup, analyze, and come back hungrier. The sting of defeat sharpens their competitive edge. It builds what psychologists call grit, the combination of passion and perseverance that drives long-term success. In fact, studies of elite athletes show that those who experience failure early in their careers often develop stronger resilience and perform better in the long run than those who achieve easy victories at the start. The resilience forged by defeat also extends beyond the playing field. Athletes carry these lessons into their daily lives. They know how to handle criticism because they've been booed by crowds. They know how to stay calm under pressure because they've faced championship moments where every eye was on them. They know how to bounce back from rejection because they've been cut from teams, benched, or doubted. Defeat conditions them not to crumble when life delivers setbacks. Instead, they see challenges as opportunities to prove themselves again. American culture celebrates this spirit deeply. The comeback story is a central narrative in sports. Fans love not just dominance, but redemption. They cheer for the boxer who lost his title only to reclaim it, the runner who stumbled in one Olympics but won gold in the next, the team that blew a lead one year and returned to win it all the next season. These stories resonate because they mirror the human experience. Everyone knows what it feels like to fall short. What inspires us is watching athletes transform that pain into motivation and eventually into triumph. Take Serena Williams, for example. Across her storied tennis career, she has endured heartbreaking defeats, public criticism, and even near career-ending injuries. Yet time and again, she has returned stronger. After losses that would crush most athletes, she rededicated herself to training, adjusted her strategies, and used the sting of defeat to push beyond limits. Her ability to harness loss as motivation didn't just cement her as one of the greatest athletes of all time, it turned her into a symbol of resilience for millions around the world. Or look at the American Olympic track stars who often speak openly about the role defeat plays in shaping their careers. For runners, races can be won or lost by fractions of a second. Missing a medal by the tiniest margin is devastating, but it also becomes a spark. Athletes who fall short often push themselves harder in training, refusing to accept that outcome as final. They review every detail, from nutrition to stride mechanics, because they know that failure is feedback. And when they finally achieve victory, the joy is amplified by the memory of how far they had to climb from their lowest points. Defeat also bonds athletes together. Teams that lose tough games often develop stronger unity than teams that coast through easy victories. Shared disappointment creates a shared purpose. They huddle together not just to commiserate, but to promise one another that they'll come back stronger. This collective resilience often leads to historic comebacks. Think of the 2016 Chicago Cubs, who endured over a century of defeat before finally winning the World Series. Each year of heartbreak wasn't wasted. It built a fan base and a culture that cherished resilience as much as victory. When they finally triumphed, it wasn't just about baseball. It was about the lesson that perseverance pays off. On a personal level, athletes who embrace defeat as motivation cultivate habits that benefit them long after their playing days are over. They learn self-discipline from showing up to practice after losses. They learn patience from rebuilding skills that failed under pressure. They learn adaptability by adjusting strategies when old approaches stop working. These habits become part of who they are, shaping them as leaders, parents, and professionals in whatever they pursue next. The reason defeat is such a powerful motivator is simple. It awakens hunger. Winning feels good, but it can also create comfort. Comfort dulls the edge that drives greatness. Losing, by contrast, ignites fire. It reminds athletes of what's at stake, of how much they care, of how badly they want to improve. This hunger often transforms ordinary athletes into extraordinary ones. It turns potential into performance, dreams into discipline. So why do athletes turn defeats into motivation instead of despair? Because they make a choice. Defeat offers two paths: surrender or growth. Those who surrender let the loss define them. Those who grow let the loss refine them. The difference lies in mindset. American athletes, shaped by a culture that values comebacks and resilience, are trained to choose growth. They're reminded that defeat is not permanent, that it is simply a chapter in a longer story. And by embracing that truth, they write endings that inspire the world. For you, the lesson is the same. You don't need to be an athlete to learn from their resilience. Whatever your field, business, academics, personal goals, defeat is inevitable. You will face rejection, mistakes, and setbacks. The question is not whether you will fail, but what you will do when you do. Will you treat defeat as a grave or as a seed? Will you let it bury you, or will you let it grow you? The athletes we admire most show us the answer. They remind us that defeat is not the opposite of victory. It is the foundation of it. Every champion was once someone who refused to let a loss end their story. Every victory parade began with a moment of crushing disappointment that fueled the desire to keep going. And every athlete who turned defeat into motivation shows us that the most important scoreboard is not the one in the stadium, but the one inside, where resilience wins every time. Defeat can feel like a wound that never heals, but for athletes it often becomes the scar tissue that makes them stronger. In part 1, we explored how loss shapes resilience, and how iconic figures like Michael Jordan and Serena Williams transformed failure into fuel. Now in part 2, we will dig deeper into the mechanics of how athletes turn defeats into motivation. We'll look at the mindset shifts, the training habits, the support systems, and the cultural factors that allow athletes to rise from setbacks. By examining these elements closely, we'll uncover lessons that apply not only to sports, but to anyone striving for excellence in life. When an athlete experiences defeat, the first step toward using it as motivation is acceptance. It may sound simple, but denial is a powerful trap. Many athletes are tempted to blame referees, conditions, or luck. While external factors can play a role, growth begins only when the athlete owns the outcome. Accepting responsibility does not mean wallowing in guilt. It means recognizing that there is something to learn. This ownership transforms defeat from an insult into an opportunity. Athletes who embrace accountability are the ones who channel loss into renewed determination rather than endless excuses. The next step is analysis. Defeat offers data. A sprinter who loses a race by a fraction of a second can study their stride pattern. A basketball player who misses crucial free throws can adjust their shooting mechanics. A swimmer who fades in the final lap can refine endurance training. Losses illuminate weaknesses more clearly than victories. Athletes and their coaches break down every detail, searching for insights. This process turns disappointment into a playbook for improvement. In fact, many teams now treat losses as research sessions. The sting of defeat sharpens focus, and that focus drives the small changes that later produce big wins. Emotional processing is another key. Defeat hurts. It can create feelings of shame, frustration, or self-doubt. Athletes who ignore these emotions often carry them like weights into future competitions. Those who confront them, however, learn to release the pain and replace it with determination. Techniques like journaling, mindfulness, and visualization are common tools. American athletes, in particular, often lean on sports psychologists to reframe defeat. Instead of viewing loss as proof of inadequacy, they are trained to see it as feedback. This reframing protects confidence and preserves motivation. One powerful example of this mindset in action comes from American football. Quarterbacks, perhaps more than any other athletes, live under constant scrutiny. One bad throw can cost a game. Yet the best quarterbacks develop what coaches call a short memory. They review the mistake, learn from it, and then erase it mentally before the next play. Without this mental reset, the weight of defeat in one moment could destroy performance in the next. By reframing each setback as a temporary challenge, quarterbacks demonstrate how athletes turn immediate failure into fuel for ongoing effort. Training habits also shift dramatically after defeat. Athletes who win easily may feel tempted to relax, but those who lose often double down. They arrive earlier, stay later, and push harder. The memory of defeat drives them to exceed their previous limits. Coaches know this and often use defeat as a motivator, reminding athletes of how it felt to fall short. This is why many training facilities display reminders of past losses, scoreboards, newspaper clippings, or even videos of painful moments. These symbols are not meant to shame athletes, but to keep the fire of motivation burning. Support systems play a critical role as well. Defeat can isolate athletes, making them feel alone in their struggle. But when teammates, coaches, and families rally around them, the burden becomes lighter. In American sports culture, locker rooms after tough losses are often filled with both tears and encouragement. Teams that support one another transform defeat into a collective motivator. The pain is shared, but so is the resolve to improve. This sense of belonging ensures that defeat strengthens bonds rather than breaking them. Culture itself reinforces this process. In the United States, the narrative of the comeback is woven deeply into sports. Fans don't just admire dominance, they cherish redemption. This cultural emphasis on resilience encourages athletes to see defeat as temporary, as something that can be rewritten. Media coverage often highlights stories of athletes who came back stronger after failure, reinforcing the idea that loss is not the end, but the beginning of greatness. For athletes, knowing that fans celebrate comebacks as much as championships provides extra motivation to keep pushing after setbacks. The physical body also responds to defeat. After a loss, athletes often intensify training, building not just skill but also fitness. Muscles strengthen, endurance grows, reflexes sharpen, but more importantly, the mind-body connection deepens. Athletes learn to push through pain, to embrace discomfort, to accept that growth requires suffering. Defeat teaches them that comfort zones are dangerous, that progress is born in struggle. Every extra repetition in the gym, every mile added to a run, every practice shot taken late at night is a direct result of defeat fueling determination. Examples of this abound in American sports history. Think of Tom Brady, drafted as a nearly forgotten sixth-round pick. Early in his career, defeats and doubts about his ability became the motivation for legendary discipline. He studied relentlessly, trained obsessively, and transformed himself into one of the greatest quarterbacks in history. Without the sting of being underestimated, he may never have developed the hunger that defined his career. Or look at Simone Biles, the American gymnast who faced both defeat and personal struggles on the global stage. Her setbacks, including falls and mental health challenges, could have ended her career. Instead, she used them to advocate for resilience, not just in competition, but in life. Her story shows how defeat, when embraced, can inspire not only personal growth, but also cultural change. Defeat also helps athletes discover their deeper why. Winning feels good, but when it's gone, athletes ask themselves, why am I doing this? Is it for fame, money, or personal pride? The athletes who endure are the ones who discover a purpose beyond trophies. They realize that they compete to inspire, to grow, to honor their team, or to prove something to themselves. This purpose sustains them when wins are scarce. It transforms defeat into a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. For young athletes, early defeats can be especially formative. A teenager cut from a varsity team learns resilience by trying again. A runner who finishes last in a race learns to value progress over perfection. These lessons, carried into adulthood, shape not just athletic careers, but life trajectories. In fact, many business leaders, military officers, and public figures credit their ability to handle stress to defeats they experienced in sports. The playing field becomes a training ground for the challenges of life itself. There is also a spiritual dimension to how athletes process defeat. Many American athletes speak openly about faith as a source of strength. Losses, in this view, are not accidents, but part of a larger plan. This perspective helps them see defeat not as punishment, but as preparation. Whether through prayer, meditation, or reflection, they use spirituality to reframe failure. This approach doesn't lessen the sting of defeat, but it adds meaning, turning pain into purpose. The transformation of defeat into motivation is not automatic. Some athletes collapse under pressure, allowing loss to define them. The difference lies in mindset. Those who see defeat as final never rise again. Those who see defeat as feedback return stronger. This is why sports psychologists emphasize growth mindset, the belief that abilities can improve with effort. Athletes with growth mindset don't see defeat as evidence of permanent weakness. They see it as evidence of where they need to work. This mindset, nurtured over time, becomes the foundation of resilience. For anyone outside of sports, these lessons are universal. You don't need to be an Olympian to experience defeat. Maybe your scoreboard is a failed project at work, a rejected application, or a personal goal that slipped away. The same principles apply. Accept responsibility, analyze mistakes, process emotions, lean on your support system, and let defeat sharpen your discipline. When you do, defeat stops being the end of your story and becomes the chapter that makes the ending meaningful. The truth is, defeat is inevitable. No athlete wins forever. No entrepreneur succeeds at every venture. No student aces every exam. The question is not whether you will face defeat, but whether you will learn from it. Athletes show us the blueprint: accept, analyze, adapt, endure. This process transforms losses into lessons, setbacks into stepping stones, and defeats into motivation. When we watch athletes bounce back from crushing losses, we aren't just cheering for their physical skills, we're admiring their resilience. We see ourselves in their struggles, and we find hope in their comebacks. Their stories remind us that defeat is not fatal. It is, in fact, the most reliable teacher we'll ever have. And for those who are willing to learn, it is the key to unlocking not just victory in sports, but victory in life. Defeat is never easy to swallow, especially in sports where everything is measured in public view. The cameras capture the missed shots, the final scoreboard, the slumped shoulders. For athletes, losses can feel like the world is watching them fail. And yet, when we look closer at the stories of champions, we see a pattern. Their greatest triumphs are rooted in their hardest defeats. Part 3 of this exploration focuses on how athletes actively convert those moments of heartbreak into engines of motivation, shaping not only their careers but also their character. This isn't about glorifying loss. It's about understanding how resilience transforms loss into legacy, and how that lesson can be applied to our own lives. When defeat strikes, the initial response is often pain and doubt. Athletes question whether they're good enough, whether the hours of training were wasted, whether they should keep going. This raw moment of vulnerability is the crossroads where some give up and others rise. What makes the difference is the mindset they adopt. Those who see defeat as a mirror, reflecting weaknesses and areas for growth, emerge stronger. Those who see defeat as a verdict of inadequacy fade away. The choice is subtle but decisive. Do you let the loss define you, or do you let it refine you? Athletes who choose refinement approach defeat with curiosity. They ask, what can I learn here? What does this teach me about myself? This shift in perspective transforms defeat from humiliation into education. A missed shot isn't just a mistake, it's data. A slow finish isn't just failure, it's feedback. By treating every loss as a lesson, athletes build a reservoir of insights that success alone could never provide. They don't just train harder after defeat, they train smarter, guided by the precision of lessons written in pain. The story of American swimmer Michael Phelps illustrates this power vividly. Long before becoming the most decorated Olympian in history, Phelps faced crushing disappointments. At the 2012 London Olympics, he failed to medal in an event he was expected to dominate. The world speculated that his reign was over, but instead of retiring in shame, Phelps used that defeat to refocus. He studied what had gone wrong, adjusted his training, and returned in 2016 to win multiple golds. That comeback wasn't born from raw talent alone. It was fueled by the sting of earlier defeat and the motivation to write a different ending. Defeat also teaches athletes about patience. In a culture obsessed with instant gratification, sports remind us that growth takes time. A sprinter may need years to shave off fractions of a second. A basketball player may practice free throws thousands of times to correct a weakness. Defeat forces athletes to slow down, to accept that mastery is not immediate. This patience becomes a secret weapon. When others quit because progress feels too slow, resilient athletes persist, knowing that true greatness is a long game. Another profound lesson athletes draw from defeat is perspective. Losses can feel overwhelming in the moment, but over time, athletes learn to see them as part of a larger story. Serena Williams once remarked that a single loss didn't define her career. It was just one chapter in a much bigger book. This perspective frees athletes from despair. They realize that setbacks are temporary, that what matters is not one game or one season, but the total arc of their journey. And with that understanding, they find motivation to keep writing their story, one practice, one game, 1 year at a time. Defeat also strengthens community. While victory is often celebrated individually, loss is endured collectively. Teams huddle closer after losses. Coaches lean in. Families rally around athletes who are hurting. These moments of shared pain deepen bonds. They remind athletes that they are not alone in their struggles, and that support becomes a powerful motivator. Knowing that teammates, fans, and loved ones believe in them even after losses gives athletes courage to keep pushing. Community transforms defeat from isolation into solidarity, and solidarity fuels resilience. Beyond the physical arena, defeat shapes athletes into role models. Fans often connect more with their struggles than their victories. When an athlete shares openly about failure, it humanizes them. It shows that even the strongest stumble. These stories inspire ordinary people facing their own setbacks. An athlete who rises after defeat doesn't just win games, they give others permission to believe that they can rise too. This ripple effect is perhaps the greatest motivation of all, to turn personal defeat into collective inspiration. Athletes also learn through defeat to redefine success. Early in their careers, many chase trophies, medals, and records. But after enduring losses, they begin to value growth, effort, and perseverance more deeply. They realize that success isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about showing up again after falling. This redefinition of success makes them more grounded, more fulfilled, and paradoxically, more likely to achieve lasting victories. By shifting the focus from external validation to internal growth, athletes free themselves from fear of failure. They discover that the true win is becoming better, stronger, wiser with every setback. For those of us watching from the outside, the lessons are clear. Life, like sports, is full of defeats. Projects fail, relationships end, dreams collapse. The temptation is to see these moments as proof that we're not enough. But athletes remind us that defeat is not fatal, it is formative. The key is to lean into the pain, extract the lesson, and use it as motivation for the next round. Just as an athlete rewatches game footage to prepare for the next season, we can reflect on our failures to prepare for our next opportunity. This resilience is not about ignoring pain, it's about transforming it. Athletes don't pretend losses don't hurt. They admit the sting, cry in the locker room, vent their frustration. But then they get back up. They lace up their shoes, return to practice, and carry the memory of defeat as a silent motivator. That willingness to feel deeply yet continue moving and it's an example every one of us can follow. Defeat then becomes not a dead end, but a doorway. Behind that doorway lies growth, character, perspective, and strength. Athletes walk through it repeatedly, and with each passage they emerge more formidable. Their greatest victories are inseparable from their greatest defeats. And when we cheer for them, raising trophies, we are really cheering for their resilience, the invisible victories they won long before the final game. Now comes the challenge for you. Think of a defeat in your own life, recent or distant. Maybe it was a failed project, a lost opportunity, or a personal setback that still lingers. Instead of avoiding it, revisit it. Ask, what did this teach me? How did it shape me? What strength did I gain because of it? Write those lessons down. Then commit to applying them to your next pursuit. Let that defeat, however painful, become your motivation. And here's the final call to action. Don't keep this truth to yourself. If you found value in these lessons from the world of sports, take the next step. Subscribe to Think Fresh Daily for more insights on resilience, growth, and transformation. Like this video to show your support for the message, and share it with someone who's struggling with their own defeat. Because the truth is, we all lose sometimes. But with the right mindset, every defeat can become the first step toward a comeback. And your comeback story might be the one that inspires the world.